rented a villa in Anzio, 30 Roman miles south of this old port town that supplied Rome with her grain and just about everything else for several hundred years. Antium, the original name for Anzio, is in the Lazio region of Italy and was the capital of the ancient Volsci people, founded by Antaeus, son of Odysseus.
Yes, and the drive to Ostia Antica is very pleasant, with the approach to the old port especially beautiful under the tall stone pines, cypress, and umbrella trees. Rome's old port town is now some 3 miles up from the mouth of the river Tiber that gave it its name from the Latin os for mouth.
It wasn't torn down and replaced by subsequent eras the way Rome was. There was no cataclysmic volcanic eruption like Mount Vesuvius. To really see Ostia Antica is to walk through a door in time into a city that has lain mostly undisturbed for a millennia and a half, buried in mud. It takes us way back to the 1st and 2nd centuries, to the Antonine Age and the prosperous height of the classical Roman era. Here are 5 ways to experience what Rome was through the mirror of Ostia Antica.
Number 1. Ostia Antica saw the beginnings of a Roman middle class. Before we enter the town through the Porta Romana gateway, we pass through the necropolis and the tombs that line the path on either side of us, a Roman custom of long standing. These are the resting places of the town's inhabitants, the rich and powerful, yes, but significantly also the merchants, the shipbuilders and sailmakers, the dock workers, and the poor.
An estimated 50,000 people from all walks of life lived here. Business people, entrepreneurs, and skilled tradespeople made up a significant part of the population. And manumission, or the legal freeing of slaves, is referred to as extensive in Ostia Antica. These freedmen and freedwomen are described as being close to their patrons, some of whom made space in their tombs for them.
Some patrons helped set up these new citizens in business, and some became very wealthy. So Ostia Antica gave us the beginnings, at the very least, of a Roman town where different classes lived and worked together, and where an entrepreneurial spirit had room to grow and thrive.
Number 2. Ostia Antica was a fashionable town. Unique mosaics and warm yellow bricks are everywhere. Once inside the gate, as we walk along the main street, the Decumanus Maximus, we come to the very large yellow brick baths of Neptune, with their Antonine black and white floor mosaics. This black and white theme is repeated everywhere in this yellow brick town. The bath complex, opened in 139 AD to replace earlier baths, was financed by the Emperor Hadrian and his successor Antoninus Pius. Hadrian and the Antonine dynasty had a major influence on the look of Ostia Antica.
Yes, for example, inside the baths there are 2 latrines. The very large one has a mosaic of a crocodile chasing a pygmy and a riverboat carrying amphorae. Another room gives the baths their name with a black and white mosaic of Neptune in a chariot drawn by 4 horses with the lower bodies of fish. There is a frigidarium, or cold room, 2 calidaria, or hot rooms, and 2 tepidaria, or warm rooms, and furnaces. Next to the bathing rooms is a large palestra for exercise and another black and white mosaic with naked wrestlers and boxers.
And the baths of the coachmen, just inside the Porta Romana, also have black and white mosaics, as do the other baths in Ostia Antica, the baths of Mithras, the baths of the 7 sages, the forum baths, and even the baths of the Marine Gate on the other side of town. As we walk along the town streets, the overall visual effect is one that stays with you for a long time. Number 3, Ostia Antica was Rome's commodities trading market.
A little further along the main street is the amphitheater, first built by the General Agrippa for the new Emperor Augustus at the end of the 1st century BC. It held 3,000 spectators. It was rebuilt by the Emperor Commodus in yellow brick face to hold 4,000 people and inaugurated around 196 AD, with shops along the Decumanus and shaded by an awning.
And behind the theater is the amazing Piazzale delle Corporazioni, or the Square of the Corporations, with a small temple to commerce in the middle. Porticos surround it, and all along both sides and the back wall are black and white mosaics on the floors of the many corporate offices of shippers, traders, and guilds. These enterprises had storage buildings called horia throughout Ostia to store the goods awaiting shipment.
There were rope traders, grain suppliers, wine merchants, and oil sellers. We find fish and fish sauce from North Africa, traders from Carthage, Greece, Sardinia, Tunisia, Narbonne in France, and Alexandria in Egypt.
Exotic animals came from Libya, marble from Tunisia, olive oil and grain from Algeria and Spain, flax, cement mixture, wood for fuel and shipbuilding. There are leather workers and sailmakers, oil from Crete, red wine from Egypt, wine from Syria and Anatolia, first quality Scythian wine and figs from Gagay in Turkey, as well as pine and aspendian oil.
Among the many stations around the square of the corporations, there is a treasury for Rome's food supply and the office of the superintendents of the ships. In all, there are about 60 corporate offices surrounding the square, accessible under the porticos and originally sheltered from the sun and rain.
So this is the business district for Rome's imports and exports, the commodities marketplace of Roman commerce, where the accounting, stockpiling, and warehousing of Rome's goods and services were handled and managed for centuries.
Number 4. Ostia Antica has a number of rarely preserved apartment blocks, and one of the most significant insights the town gives us is this rare opportunity to see 1st and 2nd century apartment blocks, or insulae, still standing. Thousands of these once blanketed the city of Rome.
Yes, it's estimated Rome had 42,000 to 46,000 insulae to house its 1 million inhabitants during the late Republic and the transition period to the early Empire at the time of Augustus. At about 1,400 hectares in size, or 3,500 acres, the density of the city of Rome was nearly 4 times that of Manhattan today.
Unfortunately, for the poor souls who lived in the upper stories, there were flaws in this red-hot real estate and housing market. The writer Juvenal says Rome's apartment buildings were held together with gimcrack, stays, and props, and often collapsed or burned down. He writes that landlords papered over great cracks in the buildings, and attic tenants, way up among the nesting pigeons, had nothing but tiles between them and the weather.
And because of this, the Great Fire of Rome in July 64 AD burned for 6 days and smoldered for 3 more, with flames leaping from building to building, eventually consuming 2/3 of the city of Rome, or 10 of its 14 districts.
The historian Suetonius wrote that Nero devised a new form for the buildings of the city, and in front of the houses and apartments he erected porches from the flat roofs of which fires could be fought, and these he put up at his own cost. He had also planned to extend the walls as far as Ostia, to bring the sea from there to the old city by a canal.
Fortunately for us, there are a number of these buildings still standing in Ostia Antica. They would have looked like this Gismondi model here of an apartment block in the reign of Hadrian in the early 2nd century near the large temple in the Forum of Ostia.
The House of Diana is a very fine example today of an insula in Ostia. Nearby we find the Thermopolium, a restaurant and bar that looks inviting enough to sit down and order lunch from the ancient menu on display. There are a few more insulae still standing in Ostia Antica, and is a good enough reason on its own to make the quick trip here from the capital.
And beyond that, there is much more to see here before we reach the Porta Marina on the other side of town, including the Capitol, or Capitolium, the Town Hall, or Curia, and the Law Courts, or Basilica, and many horia for storage, plus all the baths, fountains, shops, and even rich houses, or domus. Number 5. Rome's historians and poets often wrote about Ostia Antica.
Yes, Dio Cassius, Cicero, Juvenal, plus so many others. Pliny the Elder, who died in 79 AD in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, writes that a killer whale was actually seen in the harbor of Ostia, locked in combat with the Emperor Claudius. She had come when he was completing the construction of the new harbor, drawn there by the wreck of a ship, bringing leather hides from Gaul and feeding there over a number of days. The whale had made a furrow in the shallows.
The waves had raised up such a mound of sand that she couldn't turn around at all, and while she was pursuing her banquet, as the waves moved it shorewards, her back stuck up out of the water like the overturned keel of a boat.
So the emperor ordered that a large array of nets be stretched across the mouths of the harbor, and setting out in person with the praetorian cohorts, gave a show to the Roman people, soldiers showering lances from attacking ships, one of which I saw swamped by the beast's waterspout and sunk.